Alright guys, today is February the 1st, 2018. Welcome to the PodCastrophe. If you guys don't know what a podcast is, essentially you can just play this while you're playing your games, going to work or something, wherever you have the free time. You just listen. Every week I'm going to be talking about a variety of subjects in the gaming world, you know, while also focusing a lot on some of the Halo stuff, which we definitely will talk a little bit about. This is kind of replacing, I think, the Q&As, though at the end of every episode, I will be answering questions. So just for this episode right now, because it's the first one, there are no questions at the end of the episode. But if you have any questions, ask them down below, and they may get answered on next week's show. And hopefully every week I will be having a guest to talk with me about the variety of subjects. So without further ado, we're going to talk about EA a little bit. All right, so basically, there's been a lot of drama surrounding EA. They recently confirmed in an investors call that Battlefront 2 underperformed. It was projected, I believe, to sell about 9 million to 10 million units. It actually sold 7 million, which that's very good, but it's also not great. That's disappointing. It sold under their expectations. They blame the loot box controversy in the investor call. They also confirmed that loot boxes will be returning to the game, or if not loot boxes, a form of microtransaction. And after that, their stocks went way up, their stock price, because, you know, surprise, surprise, investors like when your product makes money. And that's kind of why EA is so popular. Not with gamers, but with investors, because EA, you know, they're very, very predatory monetization strategies. I mean, they work, they make a lot of money, and investors like that. So they usually go over to EA. But, you know, EA is starting to generate a bubble. You know, it's growing. The anger is starting to grow as the rest of the video game industry starts to get more and more aggressive with their monetization schemes. There's a common myth that video games aren't making back their money, which, let's be real here, every video game release outperforms whatever movie is currently in the movie theaters. Activision recently confirmed, I believe in an investor call, that this year alone, Call of Duty made close to $1 billion. It was either this year or last year. So it was like, oh, that's almost as much as every Avengers movie makes when it releases. Actually, it outperforms a lot of the Marvel movies. So, no, video games are doing fine financially. They definitely make back their budget and then some with every release. But with investors, when they invest in your products and your company, they don't want to see a steady line. They want to see that constantly growing. And unfortunately, the curse of that is that, well, you're going to have to outperform yourself every year. You're going to have to get more and more money, or investors are going to leave. So essentially, now they are coming up with strategies to get more and more money out of consumers. You know, simply selling the game isn't enough anymore. That's not making enough money for investors. So they've now got to focus on post-launch DLC. And now even post-launch DLC isn't enough. You know, simply buying map packs, that's not enough to please investors. You know, you got to make even more money now, because come on, this has got to be a continuous upward stream of revenue. So now we got loot boxes. Basically, you can't be satisfied with a one-time purchase. You're going to spend over and over and over and over again. This isn't like simply putting down money for a map pack. And unfortunately, I believe that the problem will only get worse. Investors and game publishers, they're not going to sacrifice the continuous revenue stream for quality. No, that's not why they're doing this. They're not doing it because they like art, because they like video games and stuff. They're doing it because they like your wallets. And so they've got to outperform themselves every year, which means they're going to get more aggressive. Right now, the loot box thing, that bubble, it's growing. You know, EA already kind of shook the foundation. Game publishers are starting to get scared. They're starting to realize they're taking this thing a little bit too far. And in an ideal world, that means, oh, so they're going to start backing off. I don't think so, because they still got to make that money somehow. Remember Activision patenting, and by the way, that patent was approved, which means Activision can now do this, and they kind of hold the rights to this system. Activision patented patented a matchmaking system, a complex matchmaking system that profiles each individual player in this weird, creepy way and targets them by putting them into matches with players that are well above your skill level and that are using guns purchased in loot boxes. And the profiling system is so accurate that it'll be able to tell exactly what kind of guns you're looking to get in the loot boxes. So basically, the game will be targeting you and spying on you. I believe that in the wake of the loot box controversy with Battlefront 2, these game publishers are going to realize that they need to be a bit more insidious, a bit more sneaky with their monetization schemes. So we're probably going to start seeing a lot of aggressive psychological tactics. And obviously, you know, the common thing is just don't play the game or just ignore it and stuff like that. And you know, if they're spending their money, that's their own fault for being so dumb. And look, here's the thing. The human brain is very easy to manipulate and stuff. That's why hindsight is a thing. Obviously, it all makes sense in hindsight. I probably shouldn't have been doing that thing. But in the moment, you know, these video games, they're going to be using these psychological tactics to get you to not even think about that, not even consider that, indoctrinate you into accepting it in the moment until only after the fact, after you've lost your money, then you're going to be like, oh, shit. And so, you know, that's what I think is going to happen. So, you know, everyone needs to be careful about loot boxes in the next couple of years, because we're going to start seeing some manipulative stuff. I mean, Call of Duty already has implemented a button specifically for looking at the gun you're holding. And the reason they implemented that is pretty transparent. It's so that you can expect and fondle over the gun that you got in your loot box or the skin. That's the only reason it exists. But, you know, kind of circling back to the EA thing, Battlefront 2 will be getting microtransactions in the future, whether those are cosmetic or gameplay altering, you know. We'll have to see. DICE is preparing to reveal their revamped progression system. So, you know, preferably, I'd prefer no loot boxes. If you want to have post-launch DLC for me to buy, I want a vending machine, not a slot machine. I want to be able to pick and choose what I want and purchase that. Sort of like Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2's post-launch marketplace that has individual skins that you can buy. I love that. There's no manipulation behind it at all. The game has a very fun, if not, you know, a little bit bog standard and uninventive progression system, coupled with this side marketplace where if you want a little bit more, you could buy money, no BS. I've actually bought a couple of skins for Titanfall 2 because I liked the way the skins looked and I appreciated the honesty. No loot boxes involved. So yeah, we're going to have to see how this Battlefront 2 thing turns out. I don't think it's going to be enough to save the game. I think it's going to have kind of a, not a backlash, but definitely it's going to generate more ire from gamers. What I think is going to happen is the progression system is going to get a lot of people interested. We're probably going to see something a little bit more interesting than just opening loot boxes. But that's eventually going to be semi-drowned out by the fact, oh, microtransactions are returning to the game. Never mind, you know, we've got a whole bunch of other games coming out. So ultimately, it's probably going to boost sales a little bit that they're revamping the microtransaction system, but I don't think this is going to matter in the end. Battlefront 2 was a loss on EA's part, and that's kind of the end of it. All right, so moving on to the next topic. I can't talk right now. Moving on to the next topic, we're going to be talking about Halo 6's loot boxes. Frank O'Connor, you know, recently made some statements about loot boxes in regards to rumors that Microsoft is reevaluating the way that Halo 6 will do its loot box system in response to Battlefront 2. And basically, Frank O'Connor made some comments about Halo 5's loot boxes in regards to debunking the rumor that Microsoft is reevaluating Halo 6. Basically, what he said is the rec system is well-liked, it's not intrusive, and people need to stop thinking that Microsoft is reevaluating the loot box system because ultimately it's not up to Microsoft. here's the thing that we're starting to learn a lot more, and definitely the whole Destiny 2 controversy, a lot of things leaked out of Bungie that kind of shed some light on the publisher-developer relationship. Essentially, it seems like a lot of loot box systems, it's up to the developers on how they're going to implement them. Basically, big man upstairs says, we want this amount of money. Figure it out. And so basically it's up to the developer to figure out how to best get that money for the publisher. And that could be with post-launch DLC, with season passes, or the more insidious and more manipulative practice of gambling, loot boxes. So basically, Frank O'Connor said, we are doing the loot box system, not Microsoft. Stop saying, you know, that we're babies and we can't handle it ourselves. I mean, that's not what he said, but... So it's going to be really interesting. If Halo 6 has a very predatory and manipulative loot box system like Halo 5 did, 343 basically said, blame us, it's our fault. That's not what he said, but, you know, it's I mean, hey... Now there's no scapegoat. We can't say it was Microsoft's doing. You know, now 343 basically said, yeah, we're doing the loot boxes for Halo 6. And I'm not happy about that. I don't like loot boxes in Halo. Halo 4, outside of its Season Pass and the map packs, which, by the way, Halo 4's Season Pass I did own, and I rather enjoyed the DLC for it. I liked the maps that came. Halo 4 had a vending machine style microtransaction system where you get to pick and choose, basically. You know, there would be individual skins you could buy or bundles of armors and skins. No loot boxes, no RNG or anything, just like a vending machine. You pick and choose what you wanted. And that was great. I bought a couple of packs for Halo 4. Man, calling a thing a pack doesn't sound right. You know, it's just because of loot boxes. Like a loot box, yeah, I bought the bundle. I bought the pack, you know. No, it's not a loot box thing. No, I bought the bundle of skins and armors in Halo 4. I bought a couple of them. I bought the steampunk steel stuff. I even bought that one that came with the American football themed armors. I thought it was cool, and you know, the honesty helps. But yeah, so Halo 6 is going to have loot boxes, which shouldn't surprise anybody. It made a disgusting amount of money for 343 and Microsoft, and I mean, hey, you know, it's smart business to use gambling because, you know, that gambling is a system that works, and, you know, casinos have proven this. It's more, I think the discussion should be more focused on, well, obviously it works, but come on, is it ethical? Is it moral? No. I think the argument can definitely be made that it's not. You know, you don't know what you're buying, you're putting down money, and then if you don't put down money, you're forced to grind for hours for a free spin at the in-game slot machine. One free spin. Yeah, it's not okay. You know, the people who say that, oh, you just grind it out, it's like, here's a better idea. How about we just have a progression system that rewards skill, you know, instead of grinding and pulling that slot machine lever every hour of boring gameplay or so. You know, that works much better in my opinion. But, you know, part of the reason that a lot of companies resort to loot boxes and using loot boxes is because, honestly, it's safer than having a vending machine style system. I would bet you that Call of Duty, if we're ignoring sales figures and stuff, take Call of Duty World War II, which has loot boxes, versus Titanfall 2, which does not have loot boxes. It has a vending machine style setup. If you were to basically, you know, if you were to ignore sales figures, pretend they have the same amount of players, Call of Duty, I bet, would be generating more money from its microtransactions than Titanfall 2, because Call of Duty is manipulating its players. You know, gambling loot boxes, they're manipulative. Where Titanfall 2 is a little bit too honest. So people look at the skins and say, I don't want it, don't need to buy it. With loot boxes, you don't know what you're buying, so you're just going to keep putting money into it over and over and over and over again, as well as the fact the entire game is centered around funneling you towards that loot box system, you know? So, yeah, unfortunately, the loot box craze, I don't think is over. I think it's just beginning, because now we're going to start seeing publishers, going back to the EA story, we're going to start seeing a lot more manipulative tactics to try to see if they can slip under the radar with their loot boxes and their monetization. Because now they realize they can't be loud and obnoxious about it. They're going to have to be sneaky. So, you know, unfortunately, that's what's going on there. But so we are going to now go to the final story for today. And the final story is essentially about a rumor that Microsoft is considering buying Electronic Arts, Valve, or the PUBG developer / publisher, I believe. I don't believe that this is true at all. I don't think that Microsoft can buy EA. Or, no, I mean, obviously they could buy EA if they made an offer, you know, and EA accepted. That's not that's not outside of the realms of possibility. But I think it's more of, I don't think Microsoft cares about EA as a game publisher. I think what they're looking more for are studios with interesting IPs. Like Battlefield, Microsoft already has Halo. They already have a first-person shooter. They don't need another exclusive. And I think mostly the reason that this rumor, I do believe, though, that Microsoft is looking to start buying up maybe a publisher or two. Not at the levels of Activision and EA, but a publisher or maybe a game developer that has a couple of original IPs under their belt that they're not doing anything productive with. Right now, the Xbox One is struggling with its exclusives. Now, I'm not a fan of PlayStation exclusives. I think a lot of them are very original in concept, but very flat and uninteresting in terms of execution. Uncharted, it's just another corridor, you know, hyperlinear cinematic experience. You know, the industry is oversaturated with those. The Last of Us, it's just another third-person linear cinematic experience. The Order 1886, third-person linear cinematic experience. Horizon Zero Dawn, take out the robots and make them tigers, and it would just be Far Cry. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn is a very, very, very unambitious open-world game that I've already played. It was called Far Cry. But, you know, you get the idea. I don't think that Sony's exclusives are very good, except for Bloodborne. Bloodborne is brilliant, and if there ever was a reason to own the PS4, it would be for Bloodborne. But that being said, I don't think Microsoft's exclusives are particularly great either. Gears of War, I think I appreciate more than I like, because Gears of War makes an attempt to make third-person shooting at least a little bit interesting with its kind of little it's reload, the action reload, I forgot what they call it, but it's like, oh, the most boring part of a third-person shooter when you're hiding behind cover and reloading. Like, at least they made that fun. But outside of that, I'm not the biggest Gears of War fan. Rise, Son of Rome, third-person linear cinematic experience. Dead Rising was never theirs to begin with, and that jumped to PC after a certain amount of time. Quantum Break, linear third-person cinematic experience. Like, you get the idea. Microsoft's exclusives I don't think are particularly great either, and even Halo is kind of past its prime. I don't like a lot of the gameplay choices and design choices that 343 is implementing into the franchise. I think it's not what I like about Halo anymore, and so because of that, there are a lot of conflicting design choices which lead to a kind of uneven feeling game, in my opinion. So I think that while Halo used to be a well-oiled machine where all the elements gelled and worked seamlessly, now Halo is very lopsided. Some elements don't work, and some elements work a little bit too well and stuff, so it's very uneven. And so it's, you know, other shooters are starting to look a little bit more enticing to me. Battlefield 4 I've actually been playing a lot of on the PC, and I've been loving the hell out of it. Like, man, Battlefield's Conquest is so much better designed than Halo's Warzone. It's unbelievable how much better of a game Battlefield 4 is in terms of every element of the game working perfectly compared to Halo 5, which is very, like I said, lopsided because of conflicting design choices with the gameplay and the guns in the sandbox. So right now, Microsoft, I believe, but like, you know, that was a weird tangent that I got off on, you know, but hey, who knows? It's a podcast, you know, it's all about listening to my thoughts and opinions. But okay, let's like get back on track talking about the exclusive things. Ultimately, I personally don't like console exclusives. I think they're very uninteresting and unambitious. They got great ideas, but gameplay wise, they're safe, derivative, and horribly unimaginative. But people like them. People on console like them. They like the presentation. You know, I think actually in a lot of regards, I think people like the presentation more than they actually like playing the game. But people like their console exclusives, and Sony has shown this. Horizon Zero Dawn sold a ridiculous amount of copies. And so I think that Microsoft is starting to really, really get concerned about the fact that Sony is pumping out exclusive after exclusive, and all of the exclusives are very original in their ideas. Where Microsoft has Sea of Thieves, State of Decay 2, and then whatever this year's Halo game is going to be called, I believe, and then probably one other. Like, that's all they got. And Sony's got like 8 exclusives coming out this year or something. And then last year, Horizon Zero Dawn was considered one of the best games of last year. I disagree with that, but, you know, that's, you know, the gaming public voted. It's apparently a great game. So basically, Microsoft is looking for little studios, little publishers maybe that aren't doing so much with their exclusives, so maybe they can use that to start generating, like, no, look at all these games we're doing. If EA was to be bought by Microsoft, it would be kind of interesting to see the Dead Space franchise, given the Resident Evil 7 treatment, being brought back as a first-person horror game. For Dead Space, I actually strongly disliked the third-person aspect of it. Horror, Horror, I think, is done a lot better in the first person. I generally greatly prefer first-person horror games to third-person horror games, even though a lot of horror games are not very good, in my opinion. But, you know, games like Resident Evil 7 have proven that the old style of survival horror can work, and also not making your game like 30 hours long or whatever. Like Alien Isolation, I actually think a lot back to. Alien Isolation is very interesting because I think it kind of disproved the general assumption that, like, this is a short game, it sucks, the game needs to be longer. Well, Alien Isolation is a pretty long horror game, and because of the fact it's long, it outstays its welcome. The horror's gone, the tension's gone, you've been here too long, it's not scary anymore. Where Resident Evil 7, you can beat that game in about 6 or 5 hours or something like that. And it's endlessly replayable, and it's terrifying because you're not there for very long, so the scares stick with you. PT on the PS4, you can beat that in 30 minutes, and it is still to this day the most terrifying first-person horror experience I've ever had. It's brilliant, you know? You got to focus on replay value, not length in horror games. And you've also got to focus on, you know, the atmosphere, being actually scary. Outlast, you know, that's not Outlast 2. I do have Outlast 2, and I didn't think it was scary at all. I thought it was a little bit too long. I thought it was too repetitive. But, you know, I'd love to see Microsoft do something like that. Battlefield. If Battlefield were to be bought up by Microsoft, you know, like with a hypothetical EA acquisition, I'd want Microsoft to keep it multi-platform. I want to see it on PC. I want to see it on PlayStation 4. Like, you can't lock something like Battlefield away, because then you've got 2 first-person shooters under the same roof, and they're going to be competing with each other. Halo and Battlefield. Like, no, you don't want that. Medal of Honor kind of saw a similar problem because EA owns the Medal of Honor IP, and they tried to have kind of a annual release schedule of shooters where it's 1 year Medal of Honor, the next year Battlefield, and, you know, so on and so on. And instead you just have 2 first-person shooters competing with each other, and it's like, no, that's not, no, don't do that. So, yeah, no, I don't think that that would be a smart move in this hypothetical scenario where Microsoft buys EA. Like, no, that's got to stay multi-platform so that it can sell well, so it can have a healthy player base, and so that you're not competing with your own IPs. The Sims would be interesting. I could see if, in this hypothetical world, Microsoft bought EA, I could see them trying to integrate avatars into The Sims, like the Xbox avatars and stuff. And, some innovative stuff could come out of that. I could even see some Microsoft world building stuff within The Sims, creating simulations, no pun intended, of, real life, like teaching people about city infrastructure and the way the public goes about its business in, kind of like I'm just rambling at this point, but you got a lot of interesting things could come out of The Sims under Microsoft's banner, but or they could just release The Sims 5 and make it super derivative of The Sims 4, which was derivative of The Sims 3, and so on and so on and so on. I'm trying to think of some other EA exclusives that they could do anything interesting with. Yeah, there's not a lot there. I mean, obviously that would mean I guess that would mean then that Microsoft would have some aspect of the deal in regards to Star Wars game publishing. Though I don't know a lot of these, because if you guys don't know, EA basically has this contract with Disney where for a set number of years, EA has exclusive rights to release Star Wars games. But in some instances with these contracts, if your studio or publishing house is bought up by a bigger company, the contract is immediately gone. Like it, void. No, doesn't exist anymore. So, if EA were to be bought by Microsoft, who knows what that would mean for the contract. It could just vanish up and poof into thin air, and then Disney would have to find another game publisher, and God forbid Star Wars goes to Activision. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on that rumor. I don't have a lot to say, just mostly, that would be interesting. What if they did buy it? Here are some ideas. But, So, guys, that is the end of today's episode of the Podcastrophe, or this week's episode of the Podcastrophe. Ultimately, it's the first episode, so we're going to, there's going to be some growing pains a little bit. Next week, I'm going to hope to have a guest, ask some questions that I can ask at the end of next week's episode in the comments section below. And if you guys want, check the link in the description below. There's my Twitter, my Facebook page. If you guys man, it's like my tongue feels all numb from the constant talking. I don't usually talk this much for so long. But if you guys have any interesting gaming stories that you think I should talk about in next week's Podcastrophe with whoever my guest is, just let me know. Send it to me via DM on Twitter. My DMs are always open. Facebook, you guys are free to message me, and I will start being vigilant with responding to you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you guys later.